Hi there folks, and welcome to another tutorial which accompanies our latest feature on 60 years of the synthesizer for computer music. In this tutorial, we're turning our attention to the absolute musical supremo that was Prince. His iconic track When Doves Cry featured an equally iconic synth riff. We're going to examine that riff today and create it using our very own Zebra CM plugin. So we'll start our tutorial today by inviting you to load up your favourite DAW. We're working in Logic today, and we have an instance of the Zebra CM plugin loaded in and ready to go. Our first task is to initialize a patch, so we do that by going to the Display and Menu at the top of the plugin, doing a left click with the mouse, and selecting Init for Initialize at the bottom. That's now initialized our patch. We're going to start creating our sound by visiting the Oscillator section. So beginning with Oscillator 1, labelled as OSC1, we need to ensure that we have a sawtooth wave selected. This should be the default when you initialize the plugin. We're going to immediately adjust the volume of this oscillator, so visiting the volume pot, which is to the left of the waveform section, click and hold and drag it down until you get a value at the top of 80. So moving over to Oscillator 2, put the mouse in the center of the waveform icon, click and hold and drag up until you get a value of 3 in the upper display. That should then yield a triangle wave. We want this triangle wave to play exactly 1 octave above Oscillator 1. So just above the waveform icon, there is a tuning pot. We need to click and hold on that and drag the mouse up until the display at the top reads 12.00. This means 12 semitones, which equates to 1 octave. If you compare the sound of a sawtooth to the sound of a triangle wave, the two are quite different. The reason being, sawtooths are generally quite rich in harmonic content, whereas triangles have a considerable number of those harmonics missing. Consequently, it will sound quieter in terms of its overall volume. As part of this patch, we need to compensate for that. So moving to the volume control, in the Oscillator 2 section, we need to click and hold on the volume and drag it up until we get a value of 140, which is obviously quite high if compared to the value of 80 that we have set on Oscillator 1. Prince had a huge love and adoration of certain polysynths, particularly the ones made by Oberheim, so we're going to try and replicate that to a degree by using a vintage filter type. Over in the filter section, if you click on the legend LP12dB, which is our currently set filter, you'll see that just above it we have another filter called LP Vintage. Select that. We can now adjust the cutoff control within the filter section, and we're going to drag that down to a value of 90. While we're here, we can also adjust the assignable pot, which is currently assigned to envelope 2. We need to set that to a value of 45. So once again, click and hold, drag up until you see a value of 45 in the upper display. We're doing this because in a moment we're going to make some adjustments to envelope 2, which will be sent to modulate the filter. However, before we do that, let's concentrate on setting envelope 1, which is going to be controlling our amplitude or volume settings. We need to change the value of 3 pots on envelope 1. Beginning with the decay pot, we're going to set that to a value of 54. We then want to eradicate all sustain from the sound, so we go to the sustain pot and drag that down to a 0. Finally, we need to visit the release pot, and we're going to set that to a value of 48. Now we need to make some similar alterations to envelope 2. Remember, envelope 2 is being used to modulate the cutoff control on the filter. So beginning again with our decay phase, let's change that to a value of 50. You may well find that that's already set to a 50, but it's worth checking just in case. We need to reduce the sustain to a 0, and finally we need to set our release phase to a value of 27. As this is likely to be a relatively loud sound, we would also recommend going to the master volume pot, which is at the bottom right hand side, and changing that value to about 50%, which is roughly the 12 o'clock position. We should now have a sound like this. Having created that sound, it's important to try and play something relatively percussive if you want to emulate the sort of thing that Prince did on When Doves Cry. We changed the notes to avoid copyright issues. However, if you'd like to add some drums to your production and you want to sound a little bit like Prince, Prince used to like using the Linn drum machine, and in particular, he used to like detuning some of the drum sounds. We can demonstrate with a little pattern that we have here. You get the idea. So, make sure when you play this patch, if you want to get a similar effect, play quite high on the keyboard and play short notes. See you next time!